Welcome everyone to an interview today with Ethen Ostroff. I'm super excited about this. Ethen is the brains, the tech forward brains behind Ostroff Law, which is like one of the most tech forward companies in the entire law firms, I should say, in the entire Philadelphia area. They were actually the first law firm in our area to have a website built, and they've just been forward thinking marketers in this market. They created the website 30 Days to Settle, and they're just using such forward thinking mechanisms to attract cases online. So today we're going to be interviewing Ethen, who's the tech brains behind everything that goes on at Ostroff Law. And we're going to dive into some of the things that makes Ostroff Law successful. So welcome, Ethen.
Thanks so much for having me, Bill. I appreciate it.
Definitely. So the first thing I want to dive into is you guys are about a 30-person firm. You're probably one of the top three internet presence PI firms in the entire Philadelphia area. So I guess like the first question is like, when did you guys decide to go all in on digital? Because so many lawyers depend on like the word of mouth and have this old school way of thinking. Like, where did that light switch kind of kick off? Or it was like, we're going to be digital first?
Sure. So this is my dad's firm, John Ostroff. And as you said, he was the first lawyer in the entire Delaware Valley to get a website back in the late 90s, which is pretty crazy to think about now. But what he did get was the ability to be an authority on Google really early. He put a very significant emphasis on PPC and SEO. And as a result, over years of content creation, over years of paid campaigns, he's really built up to be an authority where, just because of our name and just because of the fact that we've existed for as long as we have a very strong digital impact just, from our natural branding campaigns. We decided to go more digital, towards the early 2000s. And we've really seen a significant impact. We've grown every year since our firm's reinception back in 2008. So, my dad has been really emphasizing the importance of digital media, and he did commercials and he did the typical billboard campaigns for years. But what was amazing is your microphone is so much louder and your dollar goes so much further in some of these underpriced campaigns. And what we've done a nice job of is being aware of where the trends are while they're happening, whether it's Google and SEO while that stuff was underpriced. But now when you try to get a PPC for a personal injury lawyer Philadelphia, it's going to cost you $100, $150 just per click. So we're, again, reevaluating how do we best spend our money on paid marketing and get in front of people the right way. And, going to social media and going to more of a digital approach it's just the best underpriced attention that you can get.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've blown up on TikTok. I actually made a video about Ethen and his TikTok strategy, which is an emerging app where you can make short form videos. I mean, we were talking before we started recording and he's talking about, doing all this LinkedIn automation where you can like reach out to people and send, 100 connection requests per day. He's talking about community SMS, which is like where you can have like, when you have people say, text this number, 4 or 5, or you can actually be like a local number with a local zip code.
Yeah, I actually have a 215 number.
So the question I'm interested in is like, not actually the tactics, right? So I don't want to talk just yet about the SMS stuff or LinkedIn. What I'm curious about is like, how has capitalizing on underpriced attention become a habit? Because it's pretty profound. Like TikTok starts, blowing up and immediately you pounce on it. And then you figure out, LinkedIn automation, and then you figure out community SMS. So like, I guess my question is like, where does this habit of always looking around corners for the next underpriced, next emerging platform come from? Like, did you have like an early success by doing that? Maybe from
Yeah.
Google, or like, how do you actually keep doing that?
I mean, the thing with a trend is that the moment you notice it, everyone else is noticing it. And if you don't jump on it, then you're going to miss the wave. And I learned that surprisingly, actually, in the crypto world, because things exploded in the late 2010s in 2017, and I knew that if I didn't just take the risk and go for it, that I was going to miss the wave. And then now it's all right. I noticed on TikTok when I first got on it in October 1st of 2019 was my first video. When I made my first video, there were 2 lawyers on the app. 2. That's it. One was the lawyer who had over 1 million followers at the time, and another's her name was GA lawyer who had 100,000. And there was nothing they were doing that was that difficult. The barrier to entry wasn't that crazy to get to where they were, especially the difference between my content and their content is I'm not funny. I'm just to the point. I just went in front of a camera and I got rid of stereotypical things that people think of lawyers. Am I an ambulance chaser? Nope. Am I, do I wear a suit every day to work? Nope. And at the time there was a trending song on TikTok that was happening, and it basically went nope, yup, and then you mouth the word to what was happening. And it got over 100,000 views in the first day. And I noticed the trend happening that, the organic reach is something you want to find, which is, are there more people consuming than creating? And TikTok was in this amazing place when I first got on it. And now people are starting to create more than consume more and more. But when I was on it, people were spending 3, 4, 5, 6 hours on the app and had never posted a TikTok. So I put my video out, and in a day I had 100,000 views. And I was like, okay, I think that this is something. I don't know what it is, because it's not like, the difference between TikTok and YouTube, for example, and something to be really, really clear on is each of these platforms have their own personality. And do you remember a website called StumbleUpon back, in the early 2000s? StumbleUpon, just for the listeners, it basically gave you a recommended website based on your interests. And the For You page of TikTok is the same way. You stumble upon content where you're just, okay, I'm interested in fashion. So then they'll push you more fashion content. But you're not going on there searching for solutions. So it's a total seed for me. I planted seeds. I put, 100,000 views here. Then my third video got 1 million views. And I know that one of those people that watch that video, they'll need me in 5 years and they'll think of me. But I know that they're not going to need me. So I didn't see a crazy amount of conversions in the first 6 months. Now I'm starting to see it more. But you have to go into these apps knowing what you're trying to get out of it, because TikTok for me is, I'm planting a seed. I'm going to water it, but it's not going to sprout like a pay-per-click campaign would. But when you do a pay-per-click campaign, you're planting a partially grown tree and you're going to pay for it. Yeah. So you may see some fruit a little quicker, but you're not getting that sort of long tail the way that you would with something like TikTok. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it definitely did. So here's a question to piggyback off of that. So how do you prioritize your time knowing that 50% of what you do could not work? So like, is there an understanding between you and your dad to where it's like, Ethan's going to be the pioneer. Ethan's going to spend 50% of his week trying out new things that maybe won't work, right? Where is the, because that's a lot of my week is spent trying new things. And I always find that there's guilt attached to that, right? Because most lawyers, most business owners feel like you got to do more of the same. It's about being more productive within your current paradigm, your current hamster wheel. you're creating new hamster wheels, and then another new hamster wheel, and then another new hamster wheel. And some of those hamster wheels are going to break or not work. So like, so how do you prioritize trying new things on new platforms that may not work?
Sure. I think that there's two parts to the answer to this. Number one, you got to be okay with delegating. Okay. I'm building a virtual assistant team. I have a personal assistant that coincidentally is from Philadelphia, but I would work with anyone across the world if they could do what I want them to do. So I have a personal assistant who is building a FAQ database so that what I do best is get in front of the camera. I can continue getting in front of the camera. And then when I push stop, she does the rest. So that's for TikTok. She started helping me with comment moderation, direct message responding. If I ever answer a question with my work product, it is on a spreadsheet so that the next time I get asked that question, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So utilizing your time so that you can create scalable solutions is my answer on that. In terms of trying new things, the one reason why people don't try new things is because they're scared of the judgment of other people, either within their colleagues or within their industry or their family or their friends. They're scared of, oh, well, if I record, an Instagram about a car crash, someone from my high school is going to mock me. Who cares? You got to get over that mental hurdle of the fear of judgment side of this business.
So question, what's an example of a time you tried something and it didn't work?
Sure. So an example of trying something and it didn't work.
Think about like
I created an Instagram before I created a TikTok, and it was with the handle Injury Lawyers. I actually owned the handle Injury Lawyers on Instagram.
Wow.
Amazing name to have, but it also has a total stigma to being an injury lawyer. People just generally hate us with what we do.
Yeah.
And it kind of put me on code immediately. And I got some traction, but I made two mistakes. One, I was asking too much. So the content was like, if you're going through this, hire me, not here's something for you. And if you're going through this is what you do. It didn't come off it came off in a self-serving way. So my mistake was, one, the platform I chose, because Instagram is pay to play. You can't grow on it unless you either have an enormous following somewhere else and migrate them there, or you just pay a ton to get impressions on there. There's no other way to do it because there's so many people on it now. And I made the mistake of having the wrong handle on there. So what I did was I got rid of that account. I kept the name because it was a valuable name. I could sell it or something one day. But I created a uniform Ethen Ostroff law on every platform. And the branding, because it's consistent, people aren't surprised to find me on other things with the same name.
So this ties into my next question, personal brand, perfectly, right? So you made your personal brand like synonymous across all platforms. So I think a lot of lawyers and business owners know personal brand's important, especially lawyers, right? Because, it's like your name's usually going to be somewhere in the name of the law firm. So it's like, personal brand's important, but what I want to understand is like, what is the difference between personal brand and attorney advertising? Sure.
So I think about a personal brand as a value platform. Think about it like, there's an octopus and the head is your website. That's your ask. Please hire me. What's going on with you? But the tentacles are value. And each one of these social media channels is a valuable way to get to the head. And the personal brand is, what are you giving on those tentacles that get someone to the sale? Typical attorney advertising is total self-serving and sometimes bullshit. Because people are so used to seeing a white guy on a billboard that it's almost like it's become like white noise at this point.
Yeah.
So in my mind, a personal brand is who provides the most value without
Yeah.
asking, so that I can build that trust to know that when I'm going through something, that I'll reach out to them. If you have a strong personal brand with strong social proof, then you don't necessarily need to ask people to come to you, because they will trust that if you have X amount of followers, X amount of impressions, and you have proof that you really do respond to people or really do answer questions, even if it's slightly outside of your area of law, you're still providing that value to them. That's why the personal brand's important. So the difference is, I'm not going on to TikTok and saying, if you get in a car crash, hire me. I'm saying, if you get in a car crash, take pictures of the scene, call the police, make sure people are okay. And then I don't even say typically hire me. I'll say contact a lawyer. Clearly I'm a lawyer, but I'm not trying to push myself on them. So that's really the subtle difference is, trust is becoming the new currency in this space, and personal brand is the more trust you have, the more followers you have, the more business you're going to generate.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think if I were to look at one thing that exploded our company most, it was when I moved on from transactional marketing, like looking at dollar in and then worrying about dollar out. Or yeah, well, I guess that makes sense. Like
Not that you shouldn't
us
worry
putting a
about
dollar
it.
in, you
Yeah.
should worry about it, but that was the core worry. Whereas now, I go to bed at night worrying about, did I give my absolute all on my free webinars? Did I give my absolute all on my YouTube videos? Did I give my absolute all helping people in advance? And it's unbelievable that when you stop focusing on just the immediate ROI of every action you take, you realize it's blue ocean. There's no competition in the courage market, right?
Right.
The courage market is what you're doing. You're going into the unknown and willing to be criticized, willing to be looked at as stupid, and you're finding arbitrage because nobody else wants to do that. And one thing I always talk about is like, I have this saying I always say, stuttering is good. Like if you're not stuttering, throughout your week, like I'm scared for you, because that means you're not putting yourself into uncomfortable situations. And, if you're editing out the stutters, I'm also concerned. Like you
I
need to be
mean,
promoting the stutters because people want
on the
humans.
same page. I mean, when you put out a video where you stumble over your words a little bit, that makes you more relatable to your client.
Yeah.
Not that your client doesn't relate to some lawyer who uses lawyer words and doesn't, make sense to them. I'm not going on to my TikTok videos where my market is anywhere from 14 years old to 40 years old, and using the word jurisdiction and, service process. And I'm not going in, I'm speaking to Bubba. That's the best way to describe it is,
Yep.
if I'm going to a bar, would I say you were rear-ended in an automobile accident? No, I'd say you were hit from behind by a car. There's these subtle differences that
Yep.
make you more relatable.
So let's talk about, as my last question, let's talk about your beliefs around technology.
Sure.
So like, it seems like you're very automation focused, meaning if you realize you've done something twice or three times and it could have been automated, you're going to automate it. And technology helps you do that. You were talking about the fact that you're in the weeds right now of creating the automations in your CRM. So like, what is the belief that you have that allows you to actually automate the repetitive tasks in the business rather than accept, oh, it's just one more time. Oh, I'm just going to have to answer this question one more time. Because I think that one more time itis is what prevents businesses from the non-urgent task, but important task of systems. So what's going on there where you're like nipping it in the bud, creating systems in real time, and how can other people embody that?
Well, I can tell you, I annoy the hell out of some of the people here because I'm always trying to improve things, and they're just like, "This is how I've always done it," you know. And I have this theory about it in the legal space. I think that lawyers went to law school, learned how to look at cases of the past to prove today, and I think that we run our businesses that way typically. You know, what is the precedent that proves that I can run my business this way? And I just think it's all bullshit. So, to give you an example, in January 2020, my office was on paper intakes. Our intake staff would get an email from our website. We would call them. That email would live in La La Land. We would copy and paste it into our current case management system, Needles. And then we would call them, go on paper, write out the intake, you know, let me get all this information, blah, blah, blah. And then they would run around the office for an attorney and say, hey, who's got this one? Who's got this one? So just like the simple fix of, why don't we create both a daytime on call and a nighttime on call? So, you know, as the intake staff, your number one, number two, and number three attorney that day that you can dial out, and you know they're the one expecting the intake. Like these little tweaks that weren't there. Then I said, all right, until we get to Litify, I'm going to put this intake into a Word doc that we can copy and paste. So you don't have to retype it later. That saved time. Then I looked at our intake structure as a whole and said, why are we doing both setting up the case and signing up the case at the same time? Why don't we chunk it differently? Get the simple lead, which is first name, last name, email. What happened? What are your injuries? That's your simple lead. Then intake, we dialed it down like 90%. And intake at its core is, what do I need to know to take this case or not? And what information do I need to know to generate paperwork with our merge doc system? So if you dial it down and make the client spend less time on the phone during intake, you get them to an attorney quicker. So we then would email, right now we email the document to them in our new case management system, Litify on Salesforce. It'll all be pushed directly into our system the right way. And now I'm going one step further and I'm creating a chatbot that can do both simple lead and intake, so that when the attorney gets on the phone, the client will already have the case completely set up in our CRM, so that they just have to click yes, paperwork send, boom, and it'll go into them by a text. They'll have the paperwork in their phone, likely within 15 minutes.
Wow.
So I went from a paper system to a fully automated system, so that all the data gets into our system cleanly. You know, there are two biggest complaints we get, and I'm sorry to cut you off. One is, why did I have to answer this question 3 times while you guys have had my case for 2 years? We have to ask the client the same question because our data wasn't clean. And then 2, I can't get in touch with you. Why don't you get, back to me quicker? So I've integrated texting right into our case management system so that it lives. The whole conversation will live in the file. They can text our main office number. You get back to them, and it's so much more seamless.
So the question I have is my last question on the technology side before we sign off is, what % of rolling out technology like this is enforcement? And what % of it is, I guess the technical setup? Would you say it's like maybe 50-50? Because I feel like, once it's set up, then people have to use it a different way and they have to break their habits. So I found the bigger problem is that prevents action on the system side is enforcement. It's like you're worried to enforce a different way of doing business. So when you look at your successful technology rollouts, what would you say the success is most attributed to, and how would you allocate a percentage to the technical setup versus the enforcement and getting the team to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I've been a lawyer for a little over 15 months. So, I'm still new to this. I'm learning, a lot of these people in this industry don't want to adopt technology. It's just their natural habit to say no. Once you get out of that, once you break that, that's a huge plus. If you can get your culture into, we're not this, old time firm, and turn it into sort of a startup culture, that is so important. Get people to accept that changes are coming. And that's the norm. If people don't get used to things, then that's great. But as Andrew Finkelstein, someone else you had on here, there are 3 parts to employment: hiring, training, and supervising. If you hire someone, great. You're guessing that they're going to be good at what you're hiring them to do. Then, are you creating a scalable training system for them? And what I'm doing for training for Litify is I'm building this out right now. Use screen recordings and then categorize them so that you can just say, if you're a case manager, here's the 35-part video series broken down by subject so that you can just watch these straight through, then you get the job. And then I can send that to anyone we ever hire if I do it one time right. So really clean training can lead to really effective implementation.
Wow.
So if you train them right, you won't run into problems. But if you ever get asked, what I'm starting now, and I just had a meeting on it this morning, is if we ever get asked a question by an employee, how do I set up my Ring Central phone? We're going to start screen recording it, categorizing it, creating an FAQ so that the next time we get asked that, we just say, hey, here's a link to the video on that question.
Yep.
So
Wow.
your office shouldn't be answering the same question twice ever. You've got to get it to a place that you answer it once right, record it, then categorize it.
Yep. And preferably one thing I teach, I have a course called the Grand Lawyer Marketing Plan course. And I teach people, if you can also just put that on YouTube, you can get free rankings, and you can also send your YouTube links to clients to answer their questions and scale customer service. So, wow,
Yep.
this is unbelievable stuff, Ethen. Thank you so much for the time. Some big takeaways here. One big takeaway for me is, I'll start reverse, is, implementing new technology comes down to creating a culture of change, of understanding that, evolve or die, really, and communicating that to the team. The next thing is the difference between personal brand and attorney advertising really comes down to value. And that was a big insight, because I think a lot of attorneys are focused on buying leads, man. Where are the leads? So, the real explosive growth comes from putting value out there in advance without an ask tied to it. And then the third takeaway is this pioneering mindset you have, where you're always looking for the next wave to capitalize on before other people capitalize on it. And understanding that sometimes you're going to fail, but ultimately all of the opportunity comes from taking advantage of trends before other people know it. So Ethen, awesome takeaways. Thank you so much for your time. Where can everyone follow up with you?
I will give you a link to my Linktree. It has access to any way you want to get in touch with me. Of course, God forbid, if anyone's going through anything, I practice personal injury law. I'd be happy to, set up a free consultation. But if anyone just generally wants to pick my brain, I love these conversations. It's kind of stuff I like to do. So I'd be happy to, set up a conversation.
Love it. So we'll put that link in the description. Thank you so much for your time, and everyone for listening today. And make sure you subscribe to the SMB Team YouTube channel if you want to get notificaciones of our upcoming videos and content. And stay great, stay powerful, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.